Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Your ongoing support means the world to me. Before we jump into our episode today, I wanted to speak about an opportunity that exists. I do personal coaching in the areas of health, mindset, you can call it spirituality, I am a rabbi after all, and relationships and career. So what does it mean to work with a coach? Basically, we would work one-on-one to help you set goals and go after and achieve those goals. And even sometimes the most difficult part is figuring out what kind of goals that you want or what you are looking for in the first place. So if this sounds like something that you could be interested in or know someone that would benefit, thank God I've been able to help quite a few clients over my years, and I'd be happy to help you. So please just reach out. Simplest way is through either social media or my email, rabbirupp@gmail.com. And now, our episode. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a big one. Today I am thrilled to have on Jamie Geller, who is the best-selling cookbook author, who has an amazing website. She has a magazine. She worked for HBO. She's really accomplished a lot. And today we speak about not only her favorite, I don't even ask her what her favorite recipe is. I guess you have to check out a different podcast for that one. But we really go into what does it mean to be a leader and how do you balance your career and your family. And what's really fantastic is to hear how someone who's doing it all is doing it and how she kind of perceives herself. So guys, to be perfectly frank, there's a lot of lady power here, but I think that the lessons are absolutely universal. It's unbelievably inspiring to speak to her, and I think that you will get a ton out of this episode. So with no further ado, Jamie Geller.
When was the first time that you felt that you should be going into media?
Oh my gosh. I always wanted to be famous. But I couldn't act and I couldn't sing, and I didn't think that
what is always because I had that when I was a kid also, but do you have a memory the first time you're I have to be famous?
Well, my mom started us in dance classes at 2. Mm-hmm. So I've been on the stage since I'm 2 years old. And by the time I was 5 years old, she put me in a professional dance troupe. And I was the only kid featured amongst an adult professional dancers. So I had a love for the stage at a very young age. So it was starting then. But once I realized I didn't really have the talent to just be a famous singer or actor, so I decided to go into journalism simply because it's something you could study and you could also be famous. So that was the idea once I guess high school age.
You speak very publicly about it, that you didn't grow up in a traditional Orthodox home. Tell me a little bit about how you got into that, what that experience was like, and then most fascinating for me is, was there kind of a watershed moment where you realized you had to put that above your career because you were already very much entrenched in, a very successful career at that point?
Sure. So my mother's dream was to be very successful, really. And so when I went to NYU, she had a lot of dreams. She also wanted me to be the first woman Jewish president of the United States. So no pressure. Totally. So basically, when I went to NYU and then I started to work in television, I worked at HBO and I worked at CNN, and I grew up conservative. I went to a Jewish day school, a Salman Schechter day school, and then Akiba Hebrew Academy in Philadelphia. So even though we didn't grow up religious, the goal was to meet and marry a nice Jewish man and support Israel in any way that you can. And so once I went to NYU, and then once I went to HBO, once I went to CNN, and I was going to the Oscars and the Emmys, and the daytime, the VH1 Music Awards and MTV Awards, all these different shows and red carpets and behind the scenes and backstage and parties and after parties, my mom started freaking out. She's like, oh my gosh, she's not going to meet and marry a nice Jewish guy at the after party of the Oscars. So she sent me to these Jewish singles Torah classes in Manhattan. And it wasn't for people who were religious or observant, just professional Jewish singles. They would come and they would tell you something about the weekly Torah portion that pertained to a busy professional's life in Manhattan. And then you mingle after. So the idea was that I should meet and marry a nice Jewish guy. And so that's how I started to be introduced to Orthodox Judaism through those different organizations and classes that were happening all over New York City.
There's a point where the inspiration stops and the panic sets in that maybe we've been living our lives completely a little bit differently than we're going to be going. Did you have that experience? And what did that mean for your career?
Yeah, I've had like 500 of those experiences. I'm a very emotional person. And so basically it began that I worked 24/7. And when you work in television and when you work in Manhattan, there's no other city in the world that is as fast paced and as professionally focused as New York City. I even say, like, even my friends who were school teachers, like I never saw that intense level of a school teacher. So, I really was nonstop, and there was no time to breathe and no time to eat and no time to think and no time to do anything for yourself, no time for life. And when I started going to these classes, I took this 1 hour for myself once a week and started to feed my soul. And that's the second. Once you start to feed, then you realize you've been starving, and I literally remembered crying in the class. The rabbi was not talking about anything sad. It was like I was just crying because suddenly my soul was touched in a way that like had been awakened in a way that it never had before. And I went up to him after. I said, "I'm crying. I don't know why." He said, "Don't worry. I understand." And he started asking me, "What are you doing? What is this and that?" And he said to me, "You should go to Israel. Maybe." And I'm like, "This is crazy. I can't go to Israel. I'm a producer at CNN. I can't leave." And but slowly, I started to get that yearning, and I went to a Shabbaton. Then they got me eventually to a Shabbaton, a gateway Shabbaton, and I experienced Shabbos for the first time. And it wasn't just Shabbos, it was 25 hours of incredible speakers who speak to the soul. And I thought after that, that's it. I want to become religious. I want to keep Shabbos. And I worked for a show called Showbiz Today, which was an entertainment news show. It's like Access Hollywood or Entertainment Tonight. I was live every day at 4:30. And I decided that I wanted to start keeping Shabbos in December, when Shabbos starts at 4. So it's not like it was the summer and I could still keep my job and then I could, do the live show and then walk home and do a late Shabbos. It literally, my Shabbos started, candle lighting was while the show was live. And so I decided to quit my job and to head to Israel to go to seminary with no care in the world. I mean, my boss at the time was a nice Jewish guy, said to me, "You'll never find a job in the television industry with this new Shomer Sabbath thing of yours in this new direction." He was trying to help me. He's like, "You've gotten so far. You're so young. You have a promising career. What are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't care. I'm going to Israel." So I quit CNN and I headed off to Israel.
So if you're speaking to someone young in their career and have already started to see like a path to success open up in front of them, but are starting to feel this yearning and are living in that sort of murky world of what do I do, would you advise them to increase the amount of spirituality that they're involved with currently until they feel like, because it sounds like for you, there wasn't really an option. You had made up that decision that gave you the ability to push through it. How would you help someone, I guess you can say, who's kind of lacking that clarity of where I should go next when it comes to career versus spirituality, Judaism?
Right. It's hard to say. It's terrible to say that sometimes you have to choose between the two, but I don't think that that's the first step. I think the first step is to increase the spirituality. I started going to these Torah classes and I did not listen to the rabbi the first time he told me, "I see you, you're interested, you're excited, he wants to ship me off to Israel to become a religious girl, overnight." That process took like a few maybe a year or a little bit over a year, till I decided this is what I need to do because my thirst and my desire was not being quenched by what was around me. But for a while, I just continued going to these classes and going more than once. And then suddenly I decided that I wanted to go to more classes that were focused on women and women's issues and a little bit more at a higher level. Like I started to increase my level of knowledge. Even though I was not observing anything, I was growing in sort of my quest for knowledge and the amount of time that I was dedicating to the spiritual side of my life versus before. Like I said, it was 24/7. It was nothing. And it wasn't just nothing for spirituality. It was nothing other than work. And I felt that feeling like there has to be more to life than this. Like this couldn't be what I was striving for all this time.
Did you stumble on Joy of Kosher and the whole quest to teaching about how to cook, or what was that experience like?
Just backtrack just for a second. So I quit my job and I go to Israel, and because I couldn't work for a live show anymore that was live when Shabbos was starting, and I'm in Israel just a few weeks. And I'm walking up the mountain in Har Nof, which is a small city in Jerusalem. And I get a call on my cell phone from a producer who says, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, Naomi from HBO. Can you be on the set of The Sopranos next week?" So I said, sure. So I did go back to a life of television and a life as a producer. But what happened was I was able to go back into that life and not work for a live show. So I was able to work around the schedule of Shabbos. I didn't want to give up my career yet and everything that I had worked for. I just couldn't work for that live show. So this was like, I can now like have my cake and eat it too moment. So now I'm working at HBO and everything is working great. And then all these wonderful accommodations that they make for me for Shabbat and for the holidays. And then I decide I want to get married. And then I meet my husband through a matchmaker. And then I get married and suddenly my husband's like, what's for dinner? And I'm like, I don't know. You tell me. Like, I'm a career woman. I never cooked. I use my oven for storage in Manhattan. So that's how that moment came of like, oh my gosh, I'm the bride who knew nothing. My husband's expecting a meal for him and then his family and then all the neighbors because he wants to invite everyone for Shabbos. He's so excited to be married and have a home for Shabbos and to be able to host all the people that hosted him when he was single and just, be part of the community. And that was the moment of like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this and there's no one out there to help me. Because every cookbook at the time assume that you have a certain level of knowledge of the kitchen and you have a certain level of expertise and like you have a certain level of interest. And like, I was just like, how do I get in and out of this kitchen as quickly as possible? And once I learned for myself, then I started to want to teach others the same. Maybe people didn't like cooking. Maybe people don't have time for cooking. Point is, it's something we all have to do for our families and leading a religious lifestyle. We have to do it to the nth degree. It's like Thanksgiving every weekend. And so that's when it became my mission because it was something that I had to learn on the job.
On one hand, you came from a culture that is so, in a lot of ways, looking at a quote, traditional, mother and cooking and women and Judaism. And for, initial newcomers to Judaism, we are always trying to say, well, that's, so to speak, not just what the Torah tells women to do. That's not, that's family life is very important to both genders. But,
Yeah.
So the question is, you embraced this sort of, so to speak, domestic role and really have run with it. Was that something that you thought to do? Was there like a crisis of conscience that you sort of smacked up against the social milieu of New York and showbiz when you were doing that? Or did you specifically intentionally want to show, no, that you can build a business, you can own yourself, you can really be you in this area as well?
Nothing was intentional other than it's clear that my parents' dream was never for me to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen.
How many children do you have?
6, thank God. Totally, yes. And I just, to be a balabosta, like that Yiddish word, it was never on the radar. And when I started this, I didn't start it as a career, and I didn't try to, buck the trend or the terrible stereotype that there is about Orthodox Jewish women. It's just something that I saw naturally around me. If you know this community and you go and you're intimate with the community, you see that the women, whether they're doctors or lawyers or CEOs or whether they're full-time stay-at-home moms, they're not that vision of the stereotype of the suppressed Jewish woman that's like married off on this blind date, to whatever, and all she's doing is keeping house and home. That's not the case at all. It's such a more spiritual, such a more fulfilling task. And even to this day now, as a CEO of my own company, I wish I could focus 100% of the time on being the CEO of my own home. Because I see what it means, the value of raising the next generation of Jewish people and raising good adults. And that takes, 20 years, 25 years till you get them off the mat. And it's such a dedication. And I don't take this position lightly at all. Not my job as a mother, and certainly not my job now as a default CEO of a company. But I think it's so important that this stereotype, I think there are many people trying to let everyone know that this is not the case. There are judges, there are celebrated authors and artists, and everyone who are Orthodox women who are out there, making the world a better place. And then there were the ones who are doing it in their homes, which is, I think, almost harder.
To what extent do you think it's important for Jewish women, that Orthodox Jewish women, to try to find something, if called, try to find some kind of a passion that is outside of the home? Because I think that there is a certain stereotype on the other side of, if you want to go out and embrace this creative side of yourself, it's amazing. You're doing all of this stuff in media and you are the CEO of your own company. That's not, quote, a traditional concept. It's a very out in front type of a role. How important do you think that is? And for you, in terms of your personal life calling, and to what extent should a woman go to try to cultivate that within her own life if she feels that need?
Society is so judgmental. And it's not just within the Jewish world, but it's beyond. It's like, if you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you go out there and you try to embrace the world as an Orthodox Jewish woman, but it's like unacceptable. And if you don't, it's unacceptable. And it's like, I think what's so much more important, as you said, is to not be pressured by society because, now there's this trend in these super women, because we're not super women. And whenever you do go out there in the world, you're giving up something in your home. So don't feel bad if you're not out there cultivating this passion that's outside of your home. And at the same time, don't feel bad if you are. If you have a calling, it's wonderful to feed the soul, because feeding the soul is not just on a spiritual level. It can be on a creative level. There are people out there who, are artists, or who are, whether they're singers or literally physical artists, or out, however you need to feed your soul, you need to do that. And if feeding your soul just means hunkering down in your home and making sure that that place is the most amazing place for your spouse and for your children, that's also great. And you shouldn't feel guilt for not being out there. It's like we're going in circles. It's like, if you're guilty if you leave, and you should feel guilty if you're not leaving. And are you any less of a woman? That's super important to me, that you feel that you're listening to yourself and not what's like the current trend and the pressure of society.
What is amazing is this idea of a super woman. And I think that is a vision that is cultivated by social media and absolutely destructive for everybody. To what extent do you think it's important that you, as this, in your position, kind of speak to other women and say, kind of embrace your shortcomings? Like, how do you get that message out as well, of that there is no such thing as a super person, I guess?
This super person. I love that. I'm going to use that. It is the worst thing ever. It is so terrible. People are measuring themselves up against you because they think you're the super person, and then all you have to hear is someone call you super person. You're like apologizing 100 times. No, I'm not a super person. And again, the crazy cycles that we get into. I think, as much as I want to tell you, yes, you can follow me on Facebook, and you can follow me on Instagram, and you can follow me on Twitter, and you can follow me on Pinterest. Social media can be very bad for the soul, very bad. And these peeking into these other people's lives and not really understanding the full story. Some of them have these perfect Instagram lives, and some of them don't. But again, these little, like this voyeurism, it's not so great for the soul. So I try as much as I can to be as honest and as real as I can. And I also try not to overdo it. I think that there's something to be said of not posting 500 times a day. It's like a little bit, let's communicate, let's be there for each other, let's support each other in the way that we can, as real as we can. But let's not make that our life, because then again, we're so hyper connected that suddenly everyone is disconnected, feels alone, and it's terrible depression going on with all this hyper connectivity. It's the opposite should be the result. So we have to make sure that we just keep it like at a good balance,
What strategies have you used to keep your marriage and your role as a mother kind of front and center in your life as you have all of these other creative projects? And thank God your brand and the messages has gotten so, to the extent that it has, so, so large and has continued to grow.
Sure. 2 strategies. One is Shabbos. They always say the Jewish people keep the Sabbath, but Sabbath keeps the Jews. That is the one thing that keeps the Jewish family together and that keeps the Jewish soul on track. And so there's nothing like Shabbos to make sure that you realign your priorities. You disconnect from absolutely everything just so that you can reconnect to God and to your family and to the spiritual side of life, because the weekday is so loud and so noisy and so distracting that you could really lose yourself in a matter of 6 days. It's like, you need this weekly reminder to get back on track. So Shabbos is no question. And then to take that to the next level, the family dinner table. So as much as I can, I'm not sitting here and saying every single night we get together at the family at the dinner table, but I even started this new program called Fresh Families, which is about getting the family back together at the dinner table. Because yes, of course, now it's trendy. Let's unplug, for the 25 hours of Shabbos. I'm saying you got to unplug every day. Like, you got to put the phone down or in a way and talk to your kids face to face, and not in the middle of sentences, in the middle of questions, we're suddenly distracted by what's going on. So we have to give that time to our kids on a daily basis. And I kind of think that the family dinner table is the best time to start that. And then you can expand from there.
This might be the most personal question I ask in our interview. I'm not sure. To what extent do you see, as a Jewish businesswoman, sort of God and religion playing into what you do on sort of a day-to-day basis? Is this part of what you're thinking about? And how do you feel your religious mission is being accomplished by what you're doing?
It plays a role in everything. There are lots of principles. One's midbar sheker tirchak. We should never tell a lie. We should distance ourselves from falsehoods. I always try so hard in every single communication on a professional basis to make sure that, like, I'm not saying anything that is not true. You can make sure the phraseology and the words you're using are always to be very upfront and very truthful. We try very, very hard to. Kosher is not just like a set of dietary laws, it's a way of life. You ask any non-Jew, and they're like, before they sign a contract, they're like, is this kosher? Is this business? So like, I try to make sure that plays a role in everything that I do. I pray. I bring so much like prayer into my business. Before I send an email to a very important client, I send it off with, like, I say a psalm, I say a tehillim, I say a prayer. I ask all the people in my office, everyone, we all have each other's Hebrew names, so we can pray for each other, because when you pray for the success of someone else, Hashem will answer, your tefillos first. But that's the idea. And the success of the business is completely predicated 100% knowing we make our efforts in this world, but the success is in God's hands. And so I pray and talk to God every day, not just for my kids, but for my business also.
From your 30,000-foot view of the Jewish world, to what extent does health and eating healthy, and I guess even if we can go as far as to say body image, physical health, to what extent does that have to re-enter, and sort of how are you looking at your mission in terms of helping people live a healthier, happier life? Thank
God. It used to be that the Jewish world was like a few years behind what was trending in the real world. Like, we got sushi like 10 years later, but I feel that now, and especially, again, there are positivities to social media and to the internet, is that we're very much becoming in line and in pace with a healthy lifestyle, a healthy way of eating. And I think that it's super, super important to know that we can have all of these weekly and regularly religious meals and holidays, but do them in a way that's not about overindulging in just the food and feeding ourselves and so much more with the company, with the people, with the conversation. And people are very much, I cannot tell you the number one thing when we survey our audience, so we have about 500,000 people to survey, so that's a nice little, cross-section of the Jewish world. They want healthier recipes. They want healthier food. They want all natural. They don't want processed foods. We don't want sugar. I mean, I see all that trending in the Jewish world, and I'm thrilled that there's a desire, and we're thrilled to be here with our new meal program, Fresh Families, to feed that, literally.
What advice would you give, and it could be business, could be life advice, would you give to Jewish women out there? The specific premise of the question would be that still, to a great extent, a lot of the advice is coming from men, and a lot of the way that we perceive Torah and real authentic Yiddishkeit is still coming through like this mouthpiece of men. And so sometimes it might be hard for Jewish women to find that right mentor. So if you sort of you have a soapbox to give advice, spiritual or career or business advice, what would that be?
I think from a spiritual side of things, we have to feed our souls. And we really are the core of the family. And if we do not take care of ourselves, we cannot expect to be there to take care of others. And I'm talking about, you physically need to take care of yourself, but you have to spiritually feed yourself. It's so, I went to all these classes that I spoke to you about when I was single. Suddenly I get married and I have kids and I'm working, and like, who has time to do these things? And I think that even just small little snippets, as much as you can get, that it recharges your soul and your battery so that you can give it over to your kids and to your family. So I want to make sure that we eat every day. You've got to make sure that your soul eats every day as well. So that's really important. And then from a business side of things, very much so, it's quality, it's not quantity. I think we know that I have terrible, terrible guilt for not being there for every single moment of my children's lives. Every single one. As a working mother, you can't. But the truth is, as a parent, sometimes you can. No matter what you're doing, you're pulled in directions and you'll miss certain things. So I try so, so hard for the quality, that Shabbos, that is the family dinner table, and that's even bedtime. I try to do special time with each kid, even some nights if it's just 5 minutes, but like 5 minutes of special time with each kid. So I can't be there for the other every single minute of every day, but that they look forward to that, and they save things to tell me during that time. Or some of them, we do a special thing. One likes books and one likes a massage, and it helps her relax before I go to bed. I rub her back. We have a whole thing. She like a whole process. So that quality versus quantity for a working mom.
What do you think is the biggest challenge facing the Jewish community, or opportunity, depending on how you look at it, and what do you feel like your role in that is?
Oh, right, Rob. This is like such intense questions. I wasn't expecting this. Can you tell me first what you think the biggest challenge facing the Jewish community is?
Yeah,
I haven't thought about that intensely.
We've reached as a Jewish community a level of disconnect from the authentic spirituality that we do have. And I think that we are sort of running around searching for it in all kinds of different places. And the fact that I guess you could say with social media, you see so many self-help gurus and everyone out there that is creating all of these opportunities for change. I think the Jewish people, and I think this is an eternal challenge, but if Jewish people can find that within themselves, so it's authentic and transformative, I think that I don't want to get messianic here, but I think that that's kind of what we're missing nowadays. And
right, I feel like it's such a heavy question, and I feel like that single answer, what's the biggest challenge facing I don't even feel that I'm equipped to answer that right now. But just from where I am sitting, I'm only answering this answer because it was relevant. It just came up in our conversation. I do think that social media is like it's like a challenge. It's like the problem and the answer. You know what I'm saying? I think that there's so much opportunity there, but there's like this deep, dark rabbit hole that you could just get lost in as well. 100%. So I think that things like what you're doing, this podcast, and if we can now use the opportunity, you said we'll be on Facebook as well, to use these channels and these mediums to promote these messages, I think that's what our job is to do.
That's so fantastic. Okay, speaking of that, tell us what your most recent projects are, how people find you and interact with you.
Okay, so freshfamilies.us is our new healthy, family-friendly meal plan. So we want to make sure that you join that. It's everything to make the dinner time so much easier and so much healthier. It's a real holistic approach to wellness and to mindful living and mindful eating together with your family. So check us out at freshfamilies.us. And then, of course, you can find me at jamiegeller.com everywhere. And the same thing on Facebook and on Instagram. And so go check it out. There's Twitter, Pinterest.
Jamie Geller, you're a rock star. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you so much.
Now, before you take off, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to bring up something that is very important to me. If you feel like you're getting value from this, there's a couple of ways that I would ask for you to, I guess you could say, pay it forward or pay it back. Paying it forward would be letting your friends know about it, sharing it in Facebook groups, sharing it on your Facebook page. The second thing would be to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and to do a review, which is pretty simple. The reason why that's helpful is it bumps up our ratings so that more people can find us. And the third/fourth thing that you could do is that if you feel that you would like to sponsor a podcast and you would like to advertise on the podcast, that would be fantastic. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Or if you would just like to donate towards the podcast to be able to support the staff over here who are working very, very hard, and I appreciate their help so much. I couldn't be anywhere without my team. Please donate. We have a PayPal set up, and that's just my email for everything, rabbirupp@gmail.com, and you can just make a note that it is for the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we are excited to speak to you again soon. There you have it, folks, another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.